of the arguments she made in the overview of the topic, so maybe we should put her overview, if you have it on a separate page, between.
Okay, rest of the K, the overview, then the case, which is probably another overview. Okay, got it.
At some point there will be a transition, I hope to make it clear.
Okay.
Okay. Alright, everybody ready?
She makes this context to speak to the role of the balance of the team that best deconstructs the subject position of the debate. Is there assumption that we need to unlearn our privilege? But there are an unlimited number of ways it can be brought about only when we begin by refusing the very notion of a static subject that might renounce his or her privilege. Can we truly undo the privilege of being human at all? Concrete politics, as they say, inevitably fails. We need a prior deconstruction of ethics and institutions. Clark goes several this and go on outline a concrete political platform because the problem of seeing theories and informing practice in any straightforward manner. There it is. Work is precise, primarily aimed at calling into question dominant attitudes to one would seek to affect change. Despite the effort to animal rights, we remain deeply skeptical of the notion that fundamental change in our being can be effective through existing ethical, political discourse or institutions being construction is situated in itself trying to articulate another thought of relation of ethics and practice, politics to beyond anthropocentric institutions. That does not mean that Derrida is fatal as a fundamental transportation relations require deconstruction of the very notion of moral legal rights its underlying metaphysical legal support. If they are right that context matters, then you have to take into account the context of the debate. What does it mean for them to unlearn their privilege? What does it mean for them to invoke this prisoner number 239 in this space is so far away from Guantanamo with no actual access to the levers of power? The real question is in this context, what can we do? Our answer is that as this is an academic space, we should engage in a deconstructive practice. That's a prerequisite to engaging with the question of detention. Our Puglia said this is the way biopolitics operates in the context of Guantanamo detention. The reduction of prisoner past the threshold of the human life or even the bare life of the carcass life of the subject is epitomized by the Blake evidence that they read on the case argument when they say that the prerequisite for mistreatment of detainees in Guantanamo is being dehumanized or the status of becoming not human. Now they also say that it is a privilege to reject. Rejection isn't simply a privilege, it's a requirement in the context of this activity. Once again, they do not pay attention to the context, although they say that we should, rejection and deconstruction are something that anyone can also take into account. Proven. Derrida was left out of school because of quotas during the Vichy France regime. I don't think that necessarily means that a rejection or rather a theoretical practice of deconstruction does not is solely confined to people who are privileged. Also, they said we belong to Harvard, but they conflate individuals with institutions. It's the exact same kind of logic that they said was back in the 180s. Shepard and the appearance of reality. So Russell political institutions, the hypothesized view of the political war is a very common institution that are distracted from the reality of human beings. The truth of the human world is perceived only partially few. To consider a look at the world more closely to discern the logic inherent when they see this conflation with the individuals of the type, with the type leads to worse forms of Trotsky Finkelkraut 99. Men and women formed a community in the camps. It was just the opposite of the experiment to fuse individuals into an anonymous totality to recognize nothing that distinguishes one human from another. Packing people to cattle cars, beating them, starving them, shaving their heads, tattooing numbers on their arms. Everything was done to eliminate a unique identity, restore qualities that went beyond what made them examples of the time. Now go to her overview. She says we don't unlearn our privilege. What is enough? I think the concept is pretty demonstrative here. We recognize the position as human subjects, so to speak, or rather as people speaking in this way. We combine it with a critical practice that deconstructed this the very basis for that. I don't know what else would be required. She says we're just a disclaimer. We bound that with a particular mode of advocacy that we think is important in this way. We live our lives around that. It's also a stupid question to begin with. This is the entire point. Why? This is the entire point of the first piece of evidence I read on the case, which she's mishandled. It's not about how whiteness is monolithic. It's about how asking to confess privilege and unlearn privilege is the worst form of practice when it comes to dealing with these questions. Worst form of practice because they're dealing with the questions precisely embodied by the 280 arguments. You didn't do it enough. Did I do it enough? Did you do it enough? That's the entire point. It becomes a political project in and of itself, which merely describes a dominant white majority subject within an economy of fields, which makes political practice impossible. Smith and 13 in my experience with the plethora of anti-racist organizing project, I frequently found myself participating in workshops where the participants were asked to reflect on their privilege. It was never clear what the point of these confessions was. It was not as if other participants did not know the confessor had privilege. It did not appear that individual confessions actually led to any political project to dismantle structural domination. The confessions became a political project themselves. The benefits seem to be federal for the incident. The confession took place. Those who do not have privilege would have a temporary position of power as a hero. Those who confess would be granted temporary forgiveness and bestow cultural capital on those who seem to be the most oppressed. Consequently, people aspire to be oppressed. Inevitably, those with more privilege develop new oppression from which they suffer. And despite the cultural capital that was, these rituals reinstantiated the white majority subject, the subject capable of self-reflectivity. Even sincere public conventions exonerate us from blame, reward us for simply admitting fault. This is an exercise of power that reframes issues univocally while creating the illusion that the judge has meaningful agency. The entire point is you have to deconstruct the subject first. You don't go, okay, and 12. Clinton immediately opens up this convention by presenting himself as the upright man who weighed the efforts to tell the truth even though truth was painfully private as calculated to make the viewer see Clinton as being just like us, normal and innocent, inseparably seems to be implying that he can tell the truth about such personal matters is so difficult he should be giving credit. Clinton admonishes himself. Clinton states that while he is a response to a grand jury question were legally accurate, he did not volunteer the bare truth. He criticized himself even further. In reality, is simply playing a role for his audience. He responsible, penitent, willing to take proper blame by indicting himself. Clinton actually improves his public image by portraying the false susceptible. Clinton's confession is not completely false, but it's problematic about most public confessions that many facts are true, lending the confessor an aura about the authority. The confessor format allows the confessor to impose the confessor's own persona, motivate the situation. The confession inhibits discourse and constructs social problem solving. The panoramic work in public confession as opposed to private confession is not a public master. Public confession is a performance. Market performance. She says this about she says that politics, racist history. I don't really know what this means when they're actually reading a narrative from someone who was in Guantanamo. Obviously, history is not being erased. She says it's an impact argument that doesn't make any sense. Go to the case. She said go to the case. I don't know. At some point. Well, they say that Guantanamo is some sort of exceptional being, but the focus on detention of the war on terror and Guantanamo specifically erases the everyday violence of the American carceral machine. This is the exact thought that we are talking about when you thought that we're talking about that you're not paying attention to the context that they claim to be representing. Veering into Guantanamo defined as exceptional helps erase and render invisible the violence of the wider carceral system in the operation of U.S. Guantanamo can be read as emerging out of the U.S. carceral system, and therefore something unacceptable to focus on it. Attempts to erase the violence of historical space of Guantanamo as part of a revolving door. Prison environments along came a host of prison practices from the orange prison jumpsuits to the shackling to the systems, levels of detainees to the extreme reaction force used to forcibly extract detainees to indefinite detention. Guantanamo also owes much of the earlier exclusion of confinement of Native Americans, the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, the detention of refugees, the war to Guantanamo's invisibilities can also be understood as connected to practices operating across the U.S. Guantanamo's emergence can therefore be understood first and foremost as a collection of politics to be accepted with the unacceptable cultural punishment and risk.